So a lot of people ask me what it is that I actually like about the GR and why it is that I like something that is so limited, which a lot of people will interpret as less than. I have a hard time articulating this about the freedom of simplicity and streamlined and minimalism. And it's hard to explain why all of those things are necessary and needed. And I actually saw something last night that made me think of a really good answer to give to people. So I was watching the new Adobe ad. I don't know if anybody's seen it. I don't know if it's the newest one. I don't really follow Adobe all that much. So I'm watching the ad, and it's like this little girl, and they take a picture of the little girl, and then they basically draw the rest of it. So it's like this fantasy scene with a castle, and like everything is generated. I'm not entirely sure because I haven't used Adobe in probably a decade, so I don't know exactly what the newest things are. But the way that the ad made it appear is that, you say castle, you just type in castle and it will find a castle for you, and then you choose between them. And then the girl gets wings and you pick what color the wings are, and so on and so forth. So I remember when I was coming up in photography and film school, and they were getting into this, and you had to actually go out and find the different elements that you were going to mix together, and we had to learn how to do this. And I learned how to do it. I'm not bad at it. I just never enjoyed it. Like, I never liked the way those images looked when you're like throwing three or four different elements of an image together. And like, I get it. Like, I understand that photography in its base conception is a lie. I mean, I feel like if we're going to get into the reality of photography, then you're going to start getting into minutia of like, well, you know that when you see a steaming bowl of soup, they're actually, dipped a tampon in water or alcohol, and then, microwaved it to get the steam to come out correctly. Or, they don't actually use syrup, they use motor oil. Things like this. There's all sorts of lies and fakery, and they've been editing people. And as soon as they could make models skinnier and touch up imperfections of skin, so on and so forth, they've chosen to do so. Like, that is a large wad of what photography is making things look better than they actually are. That's why you would pay me a fair amount of money to go in and take, whatever your product is and then make it look more appealing, right? Like, there's a reason why they don't just, take an iPhone, go into a McDonald's and take a picture of a Big Mac and be like, that's what a Big Mac looks like. Everybody knows what a Big Mac looks like. No, 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 no. Like, every aspect of those images are, sensationalized and made this, sort of par excellence type of lie. And we all know it's a lie, but we also applaud people for the lie. But there was something about this ad. There was something about what they were portraying where I'm looking at the final image and I didn't care for it. I didn't care for it at all. I mean, it looked like a computer generated AI type of thing. And I think maybe it's an age thing. I'm now about to turn 40 this year, where I just remember watching visual effects films. I remember The Thing in particular, and just how much better that looked than the CGI thing, prequel reboot thing that they did, where it just didn't look very good. It was not a very appealing looking special effect. And I think that back in the day, when you had special effects that were mechanical or in camera, you spent a lot of time trying to make sure that everything looked as good as it possibly could. And then when you started getting the early days of CGI, like one of my favorite CGI films is not one that everybody thinks about, which is Interview with a Vampire. And you're like, oh, where's the CGI? And it's like, exactly. It's all of the little details that they couldn't get right in camera that they tweaked. That's all they did. They weren't trying to show off. They were trying to hide things. And that doesn't bother me, but the issue is when you can do anything and everything, then really you're not doing anything. So that's kind of the problem that I have, is images now just look fake. I feel like there is a certain element of real photography that AI cannot simulate. there's a certain grittiness, there's a certain realness. And what I actually think is going to end up coming from all of this is, you know, the photographers that make these fantastical looking shots, those photographers I think are going to go away because you can't compete with the AI. Like, you can't out fantastic AI because here's the thing, like, as much time and effort as you spend learning Adobe, there is a machine that's going to learn it faster than you. Like, that's what AI is. Like, there's not enough time and effort and experience that you can have in terms of making, you know, Adobe work more efficiently that the AI can't do for you. So now the question becomes, well, are we piecing together the individual elements that AI needs? And it's like, we're almost getting to the point where AI is past that, right? So, but even so, like a lot of that kind of more technical, like really quick, like you're getting this shot here, that shot there. You know, I know from working in product photography, like the dirty little secret that nobody wants to talk about is a lot of those little elements that you don't have time for. You know what I mean? Like, it would take an hour, but you're not going to get paid an hour's worth. And like, you can't charge the client for this hour. So you're like, I'm going to go to like a third world, Eastern Europe, India, and there's like all of these little marketplaces where I'm like, hey, who wants $5? Who wants $10? And that's how I pay them because I get paid like 150 bucks an hour. So it's like, oh, okay, like, yeah, it's just easier for like very small minutia things that are not artistically demanding. So if that's what the machines need, also I feel like there's so much digital photography out there in terms of things. Like, didn't they just come out with this new thing where there was a celebrity and he wasn't photographed or filmed for the ad, but they just took all of his AI images and created an ad for him. So that's where we're going. So I feel like the gritty photography, the photography that can't really be fake because there's a certain grittiness to it. There's a certain need to relate to the human experience. I think where we are going to end up going as a society, this is just where I want to go, is I think a lot of people don't like the big companies anymore. I think a lot of the big corporations, everybody kind of hates on them, right? I mean, the whole mantra of the left for as long as I can remember was, oh, the corporations are doing this, the evil corporations this, the evil corporations that. And now the right is now seeing, like, just it's kind of become popularized how awful Facebook is, how awful Twitter used to be, all the censorship, all of these big corporate interests. So I feel like everybody's starting to hate on corporations, which are going to kind of move towards this more sanitized version. And I think that there is a marketplace that's emerging where it's like, hey, I'm a mom and pop, I'm small, I love this country. I'm not into anything too weird, but I'm a human being and I have mistakes, and maybe you want to do business with me. And I feel like, if what you're trying to compete with is you're trying to out Walmart Walmart, or you're out trying to Amazon Amazon, or you're trying to join Amazon and deal with like a bajillion Chinese bots that are doing shipping, that sort of thing. Sometimes you just want to buy something from a guy named Frank from Wisconsin. Hey, Frank, thank you for making this product. I appreciate. Oh, you made it by hand. Awesome. It has flaws. Great. Because paying Frank to go make me something ensures that I will have a job, that I will have a future that's not just customer service. And we all, I think, understand that there's no service in customer service. Like, we need somebody to interact with the population. But the biggest problem I have with customer services is nobody's accountable. There's a manager of a manager of a manager, and half the time they have to call to like a weird thing in India, and it's like, oh, who am I? This isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I'll give you an example of something that I dealt with Amazon. So I bought something. It was actually a lens for a camera, and they sent an entirely different lens for an entirely different camera system. So I'm like, okay. So I, call Amazon up, and they try and schedule a pickup. But I call the local FedEx, and it had to be FedEx. I don't remember if it was UPS or FedEx, but whichever one it was, it had to be that. And so I call that particular one, and I'm trying to schedule the pickup for them to re-pick up the item to send it back. And they tell me, yeah, we don't do pickups at that address in that region. We don't do that. We can drop stuff off, but we can't pick anything up. Doesn't make sense, but that's what they told me. That's what they told me. They told me that's what that they didn't do that. So I'm like, okay. So then I go to the FedEx location, and I'm like, hey, here's the package that you couldn't pick up. They're like, yeah, we can't take that here because the thing in the system is only for pickup. And I'm like, but you don't do pickups, and they're like, right. So I call Amazon up, and I'm like, hey, can you change this? And they're like, no, this particular customer only allows for pickups. And I'm like, yeah, but they gave me a lens that's not what I asked for. It's actually worth a lot less than the one that I paid for. You're not willing to give me any money back, not even like the difference for the price of the lenses. I'm just now stuck with this, and you're not going to get this back to me. So I call my credit card company, and the credit card company tells me, well, they're offering a refund if you send it back. I'm like, yeah, but I can't send it back. And they're like, yeah, but they're giving you the option. So because they're giving you the option and you're not sending it back and returning it, we can't refund your money. So, the thing is it because I mean it was for a different system, but I had the other system. I didn't want the lens, but I ended up eating the lens because that's where we live now. And I called everyone, and I called everyone, and this went on for weeks till eventually they told me, "Well, you're past the time frame to do this." So that's where we are now. So when I think of GR, I think of you have less options. You're not being bogged down by choices that don't matter. You have four potential lens selections. If you only have one camera, you only have one or two. You are not going to have a lot of battery. You're not going to have, I mean, while you could technically mount a flash to it, I typically tend to find that I don't really use flash. I don't really use a lot of elaborate lighting. I do kind of what I can and what I just kind of light things as they are, and I'm aware of lighting as it exists, and I try and use natural lighting. There are just workarounds that I'm constantly aware of, and it makes me think about photography a lot more, but there's also a much more human quality to my work. The PNG files, people don't talk about enough, but PNG files are universal files. Like the biggest issue that I have with all of the other raw files that Canon, Nikon, and so forth use, they're all proprietary. So you know, there was a time years ago when Canon just came out with CR3 and it wasn't on anything. I literally couldn't find any software to edit it. I literally could only find one. So I ended up having to buy a whole new editing software to use my new camera. So PNGs are everywhere. So again, going back to Adobe, which has all of these features which you pay for, whether you use them all or not, sometimes just to get a couple of features. So, and then it's a monthly subscription. It used to be that you paid 200 or 300 bucks and you saved up, and maybe you had that, for 5, 6, 7 years, basically for the life of the computer that it lived on. And they weren't really going to update it so much, so you didn't have to buy it every year. So let's say it cost you 3, 400 bucks, and this is back then, so that's like 800 bucks today, right? Okay. Now it's like 80 bucks a month, right? So 80 times 10 months, you've paid for it. So every 8 months or every 10 months, 11 months, you're buying a new system. You're buying a new product essentially over again. Instead of, spending 800 bucks and letting it last for 5, 6 years, you're now repurchasing it like more than every year. And that's the only way to get to Adobe. So it's just the cost of doing business. So the idea that you're going to have PNG files, PNGs are just going to be more universally acceptable everywhere. There are a lot of lower end, I want to say lower end in quotations here, but a lot of more frugal editing softwares that will take PNGs. so that you can do raw level editing, but you're still getting only in camera. And because of that, you are forced to put more effort into lighting, more effort into composition, more effort into the product that you're creating, and it will have a more human feel than if I spliced something together and, I'm doing what everyone tells you as a photographer that you're supposed to. You're supposed to get Adobe, you're supposed to get full frame, you're supposed to get all these things, right? And GR is basically flipping the bird at all that, and it's like the punk rock option. And I love that. I love how human that is.